When it comes to pie, if you start from the crust, you're a monster. You start from the tip. In 1986, I was a sophomore at Northwestern University, and as part of my financial aid package, I worked in the cafeteria. And one day this kid walked through and grabbed his tray and his silverware and his napkin, and he chose the meatloaf and mashed potatoes and gravy and green beans. And then he hovered in front of the dessert menu for a second and reached past the first layer to grab from the second row a giant slice of chocolate cream pie. Now, what you need to know about pie when it comes to a cafeteria is they come by the case, usually 6 to a case, and they're frozen, and you buy them oodles at a time. So it's somebody's job to open up each of those boxes of pies and then cut them in 6 equal pieces. Put the pies on plates, and the plates on trays, and the trays on racks, and the racks into coolers, and then you reverse that process when it comes time for the meal. Now, there's a tool you can use on the pie to mark the pie so that each slice is the same size, but when you're cutting lots of pies, it just takes too long. So you end up using a butcher knife. And you take the butcher knife and you make 3 quick cuts on the pie. Every once in a while, that third cut is a little too close to the second cut, so you get a tiny little sliver of pie on this side and a giant slab of pie on the other. That's the slice of pie that this guy grabbed. He goes back to his seat with his dinner and his dessert, and he sits with his friends. They enjoy this fantastic conversation. He finishes all of his meatloaf, all of his mashed potatoes and gravy. He even ate all of his green beans. His mother would be super proud. And then he switches the dessert plate with the entree plate, so now the pie is right in front of him. He grabs his second fork, because you don't eat pie with the same fork that you just had mashed potatoes and gravy and meatloaf with. And he slices down through that tip of the pie, and he puts the fork in his mouth upside down, so the pie is now sitting right on his tongue, and he just lets it sit there and enjoys it. The buttery, crumbly crust crumbles just a little bit in his mouth. The chocolate filling is rich because they use real cocoa, and the cream topping is light and airy. It was delicious. And he finally pulled the knife, the fork out of his mouth, and he goes in for the second bite of pie, and as he does, a dozen peas roll out of the pie onto his plate. And I said peas. There's this thing that happens when peas roll out of your pie onto your plate that you can actually watch happen. Because you don't know that it's true, right? You look down at the pie, you look up at your friends, you look down at the pie, you look up at your friends, you start having this frantic conversation because at this point nothing makes sense. You think to yourself, maybe I missed it. Maybe it was on the menu board all along. Maybe it said chocolate pea pie, and that's a thing that I don't know about, and I just missed it. And the more you think about it, the more it doesn't make sense, because you cut through a little bit more of the pie, and more peas roll out of the pie. So now you've got dozens of peas on your pie plate. And you're confused because you've already got a delicious piece of pie in your belly that you ate. And there was nothing wrong with that. Meanwhile, on the other side of the cafeteria, myself and my friends are laughing hysterically to the point of almost peeing our pants, because an hour of anticipation has now come to fruition. Because 20 minutes before he grabbed the giant piece of pie, I had grabbed the giant piece of pie. I took it back to my table, and I brought 2 forks and a knife and a spoon and a glass of warm water and an extra plate and a little bowl of peas. You see where I'm going with this? And I used the water to warm the knife, and then I cut through that little layer right between the chocolate cream and the whipped cream, and I used the 2 forks to lift the top off carefully and put it on the side plate. And I spooned the center out, and I ate it, and it was delicious. And then I filled it with peas, except for the tip. And then I put the top back on the pie and I smoothed the edges so it didn't look suspicious, and I put it right back up on the shelf and I waited. Last January, I took a college trip to Augustana College with my 17-year-old daughter. And while we were there, we stopped at the cafeteria. And at the cafeteria, two girls came out from the kitchen area, and one of them had a little bowl of grapes. And they stood under this vaulted area and started to separate themselves. And one of them was going to take the grapes and throw them really high up into the air so that the other girl could catch them. And they saw me looking at them, and they got kind of embarrassed, and they almost stopped. And I said, no, do it. Do it. You can do it. I got faith in you. So they separated out, and one after another, she throws these grapes up into the air, and the other girl catches all of them in her mouth, and then they raise their hands in a V, and they high-fived themselves, and they gave me the double gun salute of appreciation for having faith in them. And I want my daughter to study hard and to do well when she gets to college. But I think mostly I'm excited about hearing those stories about practicing circus tricks with her new best friend who she hasn't met yet. Or maybe planning and executing the second best pie-related prank of all time. Thank you.
All right. Who has spoon number one? No. What you got, Mel?
Unruly sticker. I love your sense of humor, and you are so genuine. I was there watching the peas roll out on the plate. Well done.
The best thing I'd ever seen.
Well done. Rightfully so.
Spoon number
Thank
two.
you.
Derek.
Yeah, do you have any other pranks with other food-related
Have you eaten yet?
Spoon number three.
My name is Victor.
Hi, Victor.
This is the second time I've seen you, but I love your presence on the stage. You're just very confident up there. I mean, for me to go up there, I'd be totally nervous. You look so comfortable. Love the sense of humor. Great. I love the, passing the baton of, hey, have fun at life, right?
Absolutely.
And the details were wonderful. I mean, I could just taste the pie. I didn't like when the piece came out of it, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.